and take you back a bit now, Baldy, to when you were younger. So I'm actually I was in your brother's year at school, wasn't I? We were both at school together, but there was a little bit of difference, some slight difference in age. But I'm going to throw a statement out there, and it may be quite controversial. Was there ever a better sportsman than you, Baldy, growing up through school?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think I was one of those lucky people that anything I turned to sport-wise, I was half decent at. So
half decent was me, mate, just struggling through life.
Yeah, and yeah, I suppose I was just one of those gifted sportsmen that sort of almost threw my hand. If I threw my hand at it, I worked it out and tried to be as good as I could at. And usually that was sort of.
What sports were they then?
Where'd you start? What sport did you start with? Because you find out.
Yeah, so I suppose if I run through in terms of how I ended up where I did from a professional cricket point of view. Now, when my first sport was football, so I was football was my thing. Now, I was playing that since I was sort of 5, 6 down at the local team and stuff like that. My team was Long Lane, so Dave probably will know a bit about that.
Yeah. Some many times.
Quite a decent sort of amateur sort of team set up round down neck of the woods. Now, when it got then the under 9s, it then becomes all of the sort of pro clubs start sniffing around players. I had all sorts of teams, sniffing around me, and I ended up at Arsenal. So at 9, I was at Arsenal, and yeah, I don't know. Just to throw a few names out, Harry Kane was there in my team. Benica Phobie. Who else was there? There's quite a few that are Chuksaniki, Nico Yanaris. And then the boys that were older, now there's quite a few of them. Jack Wilshere. Now, a bit of a story about him, which probably not many people might have known, but Arsenal poached him from Luton when he was about 10 years old. So they obviously could tell that he was going to be half decent.
The cutthroat business of under 9 football coming out.
Yeah, that's it.
The seedy dealings.
So that was me to start with, and then I didn't actually start playing cricket until I was about 11. And there was just something that come through at school to go and do some softball stuff at the local playing field, and it was with Richard O'Sullivan, who obviously
shout out, legend,
will know very well. And I just sort of went down there and started hitting the ball, not knowing much about cricket, and yes, I think it was pretty much straight away after the first session. Sally went up to my mum and dad and said, "Where's this boy play cricket?" And I was like, "Well, nowhere." They was like, "Well, you need to get him down to Bexley."
Yeah.
And then I joined down at Bexley cricket wise. I then got into I'm pretty sure it was the under 11s or the under 12s at Kent from a cricket perspective. So I was playing obviously Arsenal football in the winter, cricket in the summer, and then I had a bit of an interesting wobble. I got to I got injured. Now I don't know whether it's injured, but growing pains in my heels. So I had something called Sever's disease. Now it sounds a lot worse than it actually is, but pretty similar to Oscar Slatter's in your knee, but it was in my heel. So I had. I think it was 2 bouts of 3 months of basically bed rest as sort of a 12-year-old, and as you can imagine, that was pretty tough.
Yeah.
And it was just that transition when I went into secondary school, and what happened was we started playing rugby. I started playing rugby, so this is the next sport that I got introduced to, and for some reason, I don't know, I ended up getting back into the football, started playing again after the injury. And I think it was my first term of school. I couldn't do anything. So I didn't participate in any sport whatsoever of secondary school.
Yeah.
And then it come to playing rugby, and I absolutely loved it. And I turned around to my dad at age 12 and said, "Dad, I don't want to play football anymore." So I've binned off playing football. I didn't sort of get released or anything like that. I just said to my dad, "I don't want to play."
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, to this day, I haven't actually sat down with him with a beer and asked him what his I suppose faults were when I turned around and said that.
It's quite good that your old man, even at that age, kind of respected that decision, because I think that if you've kind of devoted, and especially as a parent, you devote a lot of hours driving around, God knows wherever, but you just to turn around and go, "No, I don't fancy that anymore." It wouldn't shock me if a few parents were like, "No, you are going to do that for another X amount of years," and then you make that decision.
But I also think it may be a case of like that his laid back approach towards it has helped you get as far as you got in sport, because you did it because you wanted to do it, and it wasn't like you were living through your dad. Like your dad wasn't living through you; you were doing your own thing.
I think massively, mate. I mean, you guys will obviously come across all sorts of different parents and see different ways of parenting. And again, yeah, my dad used to very rarely get involved. He was one of those that would stay so far away from the parents, because all they did was tell him how good their little kid was, and all the bickering and stuff like that, as sort of that can sometimes happen. So he, at football games or cricket games or rugby games, everyone be on the side, he'll be just standing on his own behind the goal somewhere, just minding his own business and watching. Now, that's not necessarily because he loved his sport, absolutely loved it, but just purely because that was his way of, I suppose, dealing with it. Now, again, yeah, I think it's a massive lesson for us potentially going forward if we ever do have children, but also potential parents that are potentially looking at this. And if they are sort of forcing their kids to go to sessions and they're sort of rebelling against that, maybe that's actually a sign that they don't want to do it. If they don't want to do it, then, all right, okay, that means that they might not necessarily become professional cricketers, but that might then open opportunities for them to become a musician or whatever, you know what I mean? So I suppose, again, just to go back on to my journey. So then I obviously finished playing football. I started playing rugby. I played for Dartfordians, which is Dave's old cricket club. And then again, I got into the Kent Rugby's under-13 team. So again, sort of just a natural, just picked it up and got to that. And so then it was rugby in the winter and cricket in the summer. Now, I think the next step was sort of 14, where I then got put on the academy at Kent cricket. That was, and I suppose that was when it started to obviously get a bit more serious. And there was having to be sort of first of all, it was Sunday, every other Sunday, so I had to. So I could only play rugby every other week throughout the winter. So there obviously started to naturally be a sort of much bigger focus on playing cricket. And then I suppose from basically the age of 14 up until sort of 19, it just every year there was just something happened. So 15 was Bunbury Festival, so I got selected for that. The Bunbury Festival, I then got selected in the English schools under 15 team. So played at Lords with that. Then the next step was, as an under 16, I then got picked to play England under 19s over in New Zealand in the World Cup.
So you were under 16 at the time, and you got selected.
Yeah. So. Well, actually, it might not necessarily be under 16. I think I was 16, but I was at 17. Yeah. I was an under 17.
Yeah.
So that come out of absolute nowhere. I got picked on that. The tour was in January. I think I found out the week before Christmas that I was going out there. So it was sort of completely out of the blue. straight up to Manchester, meet the team, and off I went out to
Well,
lose.
you know, in terms of that selection, so performance wise, was there anything? Was there a few string of decent performances, whether that be at the county level or, you know, is it school? Where was it? Do you think where you obviously had a patch where they've gone, this guy's got something, you know? Can you remember or recall like a specific like period of your success there?
Yeah, I suppose an interesting one actually, because if again you sort of say that was that on the back of sort of a couple of hundreds or a couple of fifers or something like that. I don't. Yeah, well, I think 100% it wasn't necessarily that. I think it was the year before. So there was the Bunbury Festival, that Esker stuff, and then off the back of that, they basically, and it was. I actually watched the Edge the other week, and it was basically, I remember now, and it took me back to Andy Flower's regime, basically. And what they ended up doing was they basically redefined under-19 cricket, how they was going to do it. And we was the first sort of cohort of it. And what they did was basically they turned it into a complete boot camp. Now it was proper brutal, and I think it was that first, so it was that winter after, and then throughout the summer we sort of played regional stuff again, south of England, west of England, and that stuff. And then again we done a fitness a bout of winter program stuff. So I think obviously that within the summer and that there were performances, without a doubt. Can I recall them? No, but. And I think alongside sort of training and the way I sort of, I suppose, what's the word, carried myself within that, and them sort of having a beady eye over me, obviously felt that there was basically, I suppose what it was someone got injured. It was actually no, you didn't get injured. It was Callum Haggett.
All right.
He ended up at Kent.
Yeah.
Had a heart surgery. They'd done something on his heart, found out he had basically a life-threatening condition, and was like, you could potentially keel over any minute now. So he had to go and have an operation.
Yeah.
And then basically he was sort of an all-rounder. It led, or bowling all-rounder, and it led to an opportunity for someone to do that. Now I think they obviously could have gone with someone who was an under-19. I think they obviously probably saw the view of, actually, we'll send a youngster out there who may not necessarily play, but it'd be a great experience for him. And I think that was essentially the idea. And yeah, fortunately, I sort of got the nod to do that. And then naturally.
When you said about the regime and how it changed, I just want to touch on that. You know, do you think that with the background within rugby and football, that transfer of the physical side of stuff, did that transfer naturally then into that setup of that, you know, that change up, do you think?
I think so in terms of the change of regime and how it basically worked, is that it just come a lot more sort of, I suppose, like I said, boot camp wise, in terms of, so we'd go up to Loughborough, spend a week at a time, and it was out of bed at 6 a.m. in the morning to go and do a run around the campus or something like that, you know what I mean? And then we wouldn't be finishing until sort of 8-9 o'clock at night. Proper full-on days where and I remember, and then when we're actually doing stuff, the amount of pressure we was put under, where to a thing that what it was all about consequences. So if you went into a net and got out, if you got out, you were then going and doing a bleed test or something like that. It was proper brutal, and I suppose the fact that I'd probably been in obviously a professional environment from a footballing point of view, it sort of obviously stood me in good stead to make that natural progression.
So I think that could be a massive shock for some, especially young players. That, you know, where if you think, especially at that age, in terms of some people's backgrounds, I'm not saying it's been handed to a lot of people, but there's definitely been a route, whether it be through their education, whether it be through different systems, different pathways,
Yeah.
You know, when you're then put in that obstacle, that situation, right? This is what you've got to do, A, B, or C, and that the physicality side of things come in. When you've got that background in football and you've got that background in rugby, where it is so physical and it is so physically demanding, I think for some cricketers, that will just blow people out of the water.
It's interesting as well that you say, Baldy, because just quickly, when you put people on that sort of pressure and you create an environment where you're saying, right, if you fail in this environment, you've got to be punished. Do some players that might create a sense of, I'm going to really fear failure now. I'm going to fear that if I get out in this net, selfishly, I've then got to do a bleep test. So I'm going to do everything not to get out. And maybe, do you think that was what was happening with certain players, that they were sort of feeling a bit shackled from being in that environment?
I think 100%, mate. Like it obviously within it, we looking back on it, you saw different kids, and it was the whole thing. So if you didn't reach a certain level on a bleep test, no matter if you was the best player in the team, you weren't being selected. Now that's how it sort of, and I think when we first started, it did get a bit sort of too far that way. You know what I mean? I remember some of the stuff we used to do. They'd stick the bowling machine on 90 mile an hour at you and you had a thin bat. Now that's obviously great practice, but there was actually then consequences on that. So how many times you played and missed, how many times you got hit, and if you didn't do it a certain amount, less than a certain amount of time, you were then punished. And it was sort of, I suppose, look, it put you properly out of your comfort zone, which helped. But again, you can obviously see, we were 16, 17-year-old lads. You can obviously see that some people will thrive in that environment. Some people can be complete.
To me, that sounds to me more of the mental training than anything physical. I mean, that is a session that is designed around failure. You know, when you've got a ball at that speed and you're limiting with the bat, etc. You know, from a coach's standpoint, you are looking to see what character kind of stands up and says, right, regardless of the situation, regardless of how difficult this task is, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to get hit. I'm going to get in behind the ball and work my nuts off to try and salvage something. And then you'll probably see maybe a couple other players, regardless of their physical attributes, just bow out and just go, nah, this is too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, again, it was looking back on it, it did stand me in good stead for that next level, 100%, because it got you into that sort of mind frame of challenging yourself and stuff like that. But whether that's, I think again now they would definitely have adapted that to sort of bring that a bit more into line. But yeah, so that was, I suppose, my next sort of tick off the list type thing. Off the back of that, I got my first contract at Kent. So that was 16, 17. I think it might have been my March, which was when I turned 17. And then that, I'm not sure it was that year. It might have been I think it might have been later that year. I made my first class debut, but I think it wasn't first class, it was list day debut. Up at Durham, I only played one game. It was sort of one of those where we was totally out of the competition, and they sort of give me a go. And then from then on, I think it was that following year. Then I got a good run in the one white ball stuff, 2020s and 50 over stuff. I then the next World Cup come around, and I was the captain for that World Cup for the England under-19s. And then I sort of, I suppose, I then got to 21 and I signed a 3-year deal at Kent to take me to 24, and I probably played more games before the age of 21 than I did in the next 3 years.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Take it back.
Yeah, I suppose that in terms of then I then finished at 24. My contract didn't get renewed. I then come out of the game, and I suppose I just sort of done a few bits and pieces to keep me ticking over. I got to the next season, and I was training, and I was sort of set to go. I'd done a bit of trialing about and stuff like that, and I got offered a full-time job. and it was actually trading the cricket. So basically working for a bookmaker on the cricket. And I thought, and I was training, and my heart sort of weren't really there. And I thought, right, yeah, that's me done. I took the job, and I suppose, yeah, I've been on a bit of a learning curve ever since, really, in the real world, so to speak. Doing all sorts of different bits from a coaching point of view, all the way to sort of now my full-time job is I'm a mortgage advisor with and yeah, that's obviously something completely different. So I suppose, yeah, I've been the full end of the spectrum, I suppose.
It's fascinating to see because obviously you had in the space of the high, you mentioned the highs of being captain at the World Cup of England to sort of get a new contract, and then it just sort of from there it sort of reached this point, and then it was downhill in terms of from a cricket perspective. But going into that World Cup, taking you back, a bit of trip down memory lane. What was your expectations, and what were the expectations put on you for that? Because obviously we hear about under-19s cricket and what it's being used for in England. Is it an actual pathway to the England side? Is it something slightly separate? How did you see it at the time?
I think, look, it definitely is. But would I say that it prepares you for, well, I suppose, does it prepare you for professional cricket? Probably not, because the issue is that it's purely, I suppose, look, you're with the ECB, you get all of the kit, you're sort of given all of you're in the limelight, you're given you sort of the next best thing and stuff like that. But it probably doesn't prepare you for the actual life of a professional cricketer, where actually there's lots of lonely days. It's pretty tough going out there. You're not sort of once you get into that environment and you start playing, you're not just that new kid on the block that everyone's raving about. It's then you've got to then be doing scoring your runs, taking your wickets, taking your catches day in, day out over a 6-month period in a summer. So that's the only sort of, I suppose, downfall of it. But like you'll see with most teams, you go and have a look at the teams that go to the World Cup and do the whole then and now. Every team will have ones that are in the England team most likely, and then there's some that are not playing anymore.
It does sound to me, you speak to a few players, pros, non-pros, that transition between playing the game because you're a kid and you simply love sport, and you're playing different sports, and then you get to a specific age and you get advised, whether it be from a parent, from a coaching standpoint, of right, okay, you're talented in this area, you may want to look to kind of pursue that or concentrate on that one specific sport. And regardless of what you say, you're still just playing it because you really like the sport, you really like the game. And then all of a sudden, like you're saying, that, oh, I love this, turns into, I have to do that to pay my mortgage. Like that is how I'm going to put food on the table. So it wavers from that, almost that hobby and that feeling that you've kind of had your entire life, to instantly going, right, bang, that's who you are now. I am no longer Joe Bloggs, the geezer that likes to go out and do this and do that. I am Joe Bloggs, professional cricketer. And I think that's quite a huge transition to have, especially if you've got no structure within a club or advise or consultants, really. And I think that could be an area that maybe clubs want to look at.
I think it's such a good point. And again, I look back at it and I suppose what I didn't treat playing cricket as was a business because of that exact reason. Was that essentially I just played it, what I mean? Because I was good at it, and that sort of, I suppose, looking back and coming out of it now and understanding business a lot better after being in a couple of different working environments now. It's just, I suppose, the naivety that I had, that I suppose I was just going to play cricket. You know what I mean? I was going to pick up another contract and probably be all right. I think where, that sort of advice and that consulting side of things, I probably, and maybe a little bit through my own ignorance, because I was a bit like, oh no, I don't need an agent, a little bit. I sort of used, but you see these boys that sort of go and make it, actually, they go and get one of these big agents.
Yeah.
All right, they take a cut of your wage, but they've got the contacts to get you in front of people and potentially to pull a few strings. And
it's not just, it's that additional support structure. Was it the PCA? They handle a lot of transitions between pros going into their next job or their next line of work after they finish playing. So whether that be coaching or whatever role it's going to be in. But I just do feel like I think a lot of players, and I think this happens, and this isn't just in cricket, this is all across sport. People can just get lost within the system, and that reality of going, right, actually, I've got 8 months left on my contract. Like you're saying, there's probably that naive thing of, okay, I'll probably just pick up it won't be a 3 years, I'll probably get another year at least, and I'll just worry about that. I've spoken to so many people who've had the same sort of response. They might have a slight injury, and then all of a sudden their 14 months left on their contract is cut down to 6 months.
I feel like the academies, what the counties use is that sort of go-between. They try and treat the academy like a professional setup to try and get players used to being in that environment and try and put the skills but that's more of from a playing perspective. They're turning you into professional cricketers. But I get you're talking about the support around everything else. I mean, if I remember rightly, Baldy, was even when you signed your first deal, Kent was still supporting when you went to school. Like you still did school exams, stuff like that. It wasn't like.
Oh yeah, 100%, mate. Like I got a degree, so I got a sports science degree.
Yeah.
It was I got to live in Canterbury. I was obviously full time with Kent pretty much, as well as doing a degree on the side. There was obviously, because of it, flexibility over exams or coursework and stuff like that. So now, obviously, looking back at it, I'm happy. Very happy that I was able to get that degree. Because obviously coming out of it now. But yeah, from like that point of view, and again, what you said about the PCA. Now the PCA they're amazing. The support network there is ridiculous. Now in terms of that, the resources they have, as long if you want it, you can go and get it. The issue is that I suppose what we're talking about here is very hard for someone like them to be able to, I suppose, give that advice and I suppose point people in the right direction when I suppose you are making that. So the transition from obviously playing cricket to not playing cricket, or going into is obviously that's where they probably do most of their work. Now that transition of people understanding where they're at in their career and what's my next step and that's probably where the agents do come on board. Now the PCA do offer that service as well, but like I said, you go and get one of these guys that someone like essentially, I think it's Neil Fairbrother, that deal with the big boys. You know what I mean? They all right. You pay again. It's that whole thing. You pay for what you. You know what I mean? And they sort of identify. Right, actually, you need a change here. Let's get you out of this contract. Let's go. And get you. Even if it's a case of right, actually, look, you're just going through the motions here. Tell them you want out your contract and let's go and rather than just sitting here and sort of playing in the twos. Let's go and not play for free and play in the twos and go and get yourself a contract. If it don't work out by the end of the season, then right, it might not necessarily be for you. And I suppose that's where they come in and potentially sort of make a bit of a call for you rather than actually being in a bit of a comfort zone. Well, why would I want to go?
And that's just looking ahead, isn't it? That's a simple thing. I think when you're when you're playing, you're kind of so wrapped up in the now when you're thinking about your own performance, you're working on your development, your training, your skills, that actually the longevity of your life and your career isn't probably in the forefront of your mind there. So having that additional help and almost that person to take away the emotional stress of that and just saying, look, this could be an avenue for you, or this could be an avenue for you, and and like you said, you're 24 years old, and you come out of contract. For someone at 24 to say, oh, I didn't, my heart wasn't in it, that's it's quite a tough thing to hear, because that's your prime. Physically, that's, between 24 to 30, that's going to be your prime years. And it's just such a shame that, you're, psychologically, all that, and almost emotionally, you weren't as invested anymore at that point. And it's just, when you hear things like that, it kind of, it pisses me off slightly, because you go, well, you know what I mean? It's just one of those kind of things that if certain things, sliding doors effect could have happened, could have changed, different avenues may have been taken. But on the flip side of that, speaking to you now, you seem like you're in a positive place. You're happy with the decisions and how everything's ended up anyway. So there's no real foul, you know what I mean?
I think it's an amazing point you say that, actually, because Richard O'Sullivan, who I mentioned earlier, I think he is a prime example of someone who feels or felt exactly the same, where it's almost like, right, well, what's going on here? Why has this happened? And I suppose, who knows what could have happened? And again, that's where I sort of what you say about, I'm actually in my prime now, because to be honest, for the last couple of years, I've only played a handful of games, but actually I've batted the best I've ever batted. Have I trained as much? Probably not, but because I know my game, I understand what I can, what I can't do, and therefore that's what I just stick to. Where when you're a bit younger, you're still trying with things, playing around with things, trying to get better, and that's why I think, again, these past couple of years, I've actually probably taken a back step out of cricket, and it's probably actually done me a world of good, because I've gone and done other things. All right, I probably haven't necessarily found that next sort of career that I absolutely love. And it's going to see me for the foreseeable future, but it's given me that time to reflect, understand what I have been through, and I suppose understand actually cricket is a massive part of has been a massive part of my life. That's what I know. That's all I pretty much knew. I suppose say cricket was sport. I think this sort of break from it has actually, and this lockdown has probably actually made me feel and made me realise, well, I think sport is still a massive part of me, and I still need to be a part of it. I think this year and this summer is probably typical. I was planning to sort of play a full season with Bexley, and sort of try and I suppose be the leading run scorer in the league and bowl a bit and that. But
that was my dream as well.
In the five. It hasn't planned out, but I'm now starting to get into my coaching a lot more. I'm now doing the under-13s at Kent, which has I suppose changed my view on coaching massively, to be honest. Because seeing the effect that I'm having on these kids is just amazing. And I suppose, when I've originally done it, when I first come out of cricket, I suppose I was a bit I've had a bit of resentment towards the sport and that, and I was purely just there really just to sort of tick me over and fill a few gaps. Where now, on the side of what I'm doing, I'm now starting to sort of, when I get there, actually, I want to make a difference to whoever I'm there coaching with.
I would say one thing that's really good, Boy, knowing you as I do now, we worked together a lot recently. And I remember when you first came to do a section at Bexley, when I was coaching at Bexley, and you came to one of the net sessions with me then. One thing I've noticed is you take so much in. You are very much willing to learn as a coach. And I think a lot of people, especially someone from your background, having played a lot of cricket, not many people that come from having had such a good playing career and having played for a long time and played at a level go, right, I'm going to take loads of learning from lots of different coaches. Someone like myself who's never played to a level, we have lots of conversations around coaching. And that is what stands you in good stead going forward, I think, as a coach. I wanted to bring up something that Buzz and I have had a debate about this quite a lot recently, about the idea of specialist positions, specialist roles, stuff like this. Obviously, when you've come through the ranks at Kent and when you played for England, you've always been an all-rounder, a left-arm bowler around a right-hand bat. But do you think that was restrictive for you in the end? Because you could almost do too many different roles that you never were really given one opportunity to roll with. It was always, where do you fit into this model, because you have so many different facets to your game?
I think, yeah, some massive point for me and especially the back end of my career, because I got into the team as a bowler, and had most of my success at the top level as a bowler, but I could always bat, but I just didn't really ever get that exposure from a batting perspective. It was always sort of, I'd play as a bowler and then I'd always bat no higher than 8, probably, well, most of the time no higher than 9. So I'd always come in when we're either need to get some runs quickly. This is predominantly in one day cricket, or we're sort of completely out of the game. So I didn't really bat like a proper batter. I suppose what then sort of happened was I then started to get more exposure batting wise, and I started to get myself into that sort of genuine all-rounder mould. And then what started happening, because as well I was also priding myself on being a gun fielder, so especially a slip fielder. And essentially, I was one of those that whenever there was a gap, whether it was opening the batting or being a bowler, I sort of had, I batted for Kent. I think if you would look from 1 all the way down to potentially 10, I don't think I ever batted 11. I don't
the
know.
John O'Shea of the Kent cricket team.
Yeah, that's it. So that sort of, I suppose, was a little bit of a detriment to me, because actually, if I was just a batter, then I would always have got exposure batting wise, and I suppose batted at a certain position, and that was it. But I remember, because again, this is as well where I sometimes struggle. Well, I say struggle, but I suppose where in a season getting that momentum playing games was that, because I was such a good fielder, I had to 12th man for the first team. I was the first one on the list to do that, especially in one-day cricket.
So that was the point I was going to bring up, right? So the emphasis for me, fielding is everything. Okay, so from a coaching standpoint, I'm so strong on making sure that everyone can be the best possible fielder. When you are that good as a fielder and you get roped into being that 12th man, I think you actually get taken away from playing more games in the twos. So then you get less opportunity to work on one of those skills of which you were talking about, because you sat down running the drinks out for someone else. And it's that same thing as a club level to a pro level. If there's an opportunity to do something, you have to do it. There's no way at 17, 18, 19 years old, when you don't have a plethora of scores behind you, if they say to you, right, you're going to be batting 9 and you're going to be bowling in this little slot and this is your role for the team, you're not going to turn around and go, nah, that's not what I do. I see myself more as a 4. Okay, cheers, see you later, bye-bye, goodbye, see you later. Do you know what I mean? So it's such a hard thing to comprehend when you're sat there. And I go back to that point of, you've played cricket your entire life, seeing yourself as, I don't know, a number 4. I bat through the innings, I bowl with a new rock, and all of a sudden, right, you're going to bat 9, you're going to bat, bowl in these things. You're like, Christ, that's not what I've ever done before. It's almost relearning the game that you've been playing your entire life.
I think, again, it's an interesting one, because this is the issue where you sort of see guys that come out of absolute nowhere, because they do get thrown in and do something. Well, I suppose, the issue is that unfortunately, unless you basically make that transition where you're an opening batter and you then go up and open the batting in the first team, and then you score 100 first innings, and it's sort of then just plain sailing from there. You know what I mean? There's always going to be times where, so it's like, I suppose, Zach Crawley in the testing, where he's come in, his first bat, he was batting 6, he's now opening the batting. You know what I mean? Where he obviously, that's what he's done all of his life, is open the batting. It was the same when he come into the Kent team. He was batting sort of 5 or 6, and now he's gone up to opening the batting. And I suppose essentially what happens is it's all about taking that opportunity, regardless of whether it's as a batter batting 11 or as a bowler, you know what I mean, opening the bowling or bowling third change. It's just building that faith of the whatever role you get put into. The captain of that team has got faith in you doing that. Now, is that right? Is that wrong? Who knows? You know what I mean? But in a result sort of business, essentially,
They don't have the patience. Yeah.
It's a real tough one. And I think looking back on it, unfortunately, every time I played, look, I didn't do bad, but I also didn't do unbelievable. Or not once, you know what I mean? And again, all it takes is you just get that 100, you get that fifer, and then that bites you, rather than just this one more game. That's 3 or 4.
Sometimes I look at the county setup and I look at the teams, and I see aging Copac players coming over, and I always think to myself, like, isn't there someone within their academy that could potentially do this role? You know, rather than seeing someone in their late 30s who, don't get me wrong, are talented and gifted players and are successful at that level. I kind of always think to myself, you know, there's so many players coming through an academy at each county throughout the UK. I always kind of second guess why clubs take these older players, and I know about the experience level. I know so much about, you know, bringing players in that have done it at a high level, at an international level, at competitions around the world. I've always just felt, though, maybe it's time that the county setup look at just giving that opportunity, just throwing in an 18, 19-year-old who's unproven.
It's a guaranteed fix. It's like that situation with Chelsea. You see the amount of young players going out on loan every year. They ship out about 60 loan players every year. And yet you think surely one of them could do the job that the 30-year-old from Spain comes in and does. But it's about the incentive in the short term rather than looking to the long term. It's interesting because counties are judged based upon the success rate of their youngsters. For example, if Zach Crawley goes on and plays for England, Kent will get the benefits of that back from finances from the ECB, I assume. I don't know for certain, but I'd imagine that's how it works, because the players are being produced through that academy. Obviously, when Ollie, Boy and I know Ollie Robb really well. When Ollie first played for Kent, it was always Kent Academy Scholar. They love to say Academy Scholar. Probably the same when Bawley played. Every time he played, it was this Academy Scholar. So I think they do want to push young players through. What's interesting, I think Bawley was also sort of a victim at the time of the fact that the role that when you were getting opportunities, the one role that probably suited you down to a T, if there was going to be one in that team, was the role that was filled by Steve-O. And for some reason, that bloke just got better with age. He just got to the point where, like, everyone thought like he got to 30 and everyone's thinking, okay, he's looking good. And then he goes on, even last year, scoring a double 100 and taking the amount of wickets he did. That's probably, from an outsider's perspective, and I may be wrong there, looking, I think that was where the role for you was going to emerge, if as an all-rounder, to get the most out of your skill set. But he just sort of carried on and was a fan favourite as such.
I think potentially, yeah. Well, I think that definitely, obviously, was the natural progression for someone like myself. I think from that, Steve-O obviously has been a ridiculous first-class cricket, and again, it's sort of that whole thing of, well, who do we put in? Someone that we know who's going to give us X amount of runs and X amount of wickets, or do we try someone that's untested? And again, you sort of speak to quite a few people that go on the whole sort of timing thing and a bit of luck. was maybe on the wrong end of that, of that I was sort of coming up and sort of the wrong time, where essentially, someone like Steve-O was getting better and is still getting better with age.
Oh, he's a freak. He's incredible. He's an absolute freak.
So yeah, you potentially could attribute it to that, because I suppose I remember I went to he got, it's quite an interesting story. This actually, he got I can't remember if he got injured or went sick or something like that, and I was playing a game for Bexley on Saturday, and I got a message. We was fielding first at tea saying, "Oh, we need you up at Derby tonight. Steve-O's gone down. You're playing tomorrow." So I went up there, and yeah, we had it was an amazing game. I think I played a genuine all-rounder role, batted 6, bowled a bit. I got a couple of wickets. I got a 40 and a 20, and I took a ridiculous catch at slip. So basically, on the last day, we somehow what was it? So ridiculous game. We batted first, I think. No, so they batted first and got a massive score. We batted second, and we must have been about 80 behind or something like that, I think it was. And we was going in, so it was there was an hour left of the third day. So we then get them 4 down overnight, and we go into the next morning, and they're batting. And I had left armour. Tready was bowling, so James Treadwell. I've made a nice rough patch for him to bowl into.
Scrape. Yeah.
They ended up. They started getting going, and the sort of lead was starting to get bigger, and they there was time obviously running out in the game, and then he's just bowled he's just an arm ball basically, driven it, and I've taken it off my left ankle basically, pretty much behind the keeper. I've actually got a video on Twitter. I'll send it over to you.
Yeah. Well,
it was unbelievable, mate. And yeah, Tready then went on to bowl them out. Literally just out of this rough, just going bang, and yeah, we ended up winning the game out of absolute nowhere. So both teams batted for 2 3/4 days, and then we somehow won the game. And then obviously what happened was, look, I didn't set the world on fire, but
you contributed.
I contributed to the team. Next time Steve-O's ready to come back, he's straight back in. And I suppose, that's probably a good example of sort of where that 40, if I would have then got 100 out of
100,
that,
it's a great catch. It's a contribution. It's 80 red. It's your plan next week, son.
Yeah.
But this is professional sport. This is professional sport, and we say it all the time. We talk about players just taking one opportunity, and it might only be the opportunity. And the scary thing is, you don't know if that is your only opportunity or not. One of the best stories that I've seen from a Manchester United supporters fan, the striker Wilson came off the bench and he miskicked the ball and it hit the post, and he got injured, and he couldn't play the next game. So they stopped Rashford going on loan, put him in the team, goes against Arsenal, scores 2, and all of a sudden his career takes off. And I watched that game and I kind of think about Wilshere, like, if he hadn't miskicked that, probably it's hit the inside of the post and gone in. He becomes a hero. He gets a run in the team, and Rashford goes off on loan. And it's just professional sport. It's sliding doors. It's taking every opportunity that you can. And
that's what's interesting. We hear about the stories of people that get one chance, take it, and and then don't look back.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear of the thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people in a number of different sports that one opportunity has fallen the wrong way for them. Like there's when they've had the call to say this is your opportunity, and then something happens. Like this is, like you say, it's professional sport, but I think it can still be looked at in terms of what its purpose is. So obviously we've covered quite a lot there, Baldy. I've got a couple of questions to finish before I finish. But was there any memories when you was sort of playing, like any experiences you had when you were playing, whether it be training in the England camp or playing against any bowlers or bowling against someone and you thought, wow, they were mustard, or just anything that comes to mind?
We're going to call this the name drop segment, I think, from now on.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want name drops.
Yeah, name
any
drop
link to
segment.
Virat Kohli. Any just mention his name and it's going.
We'll just have we'll have a little counter going ding ding.
Yeah.
If you say oh yeah, I met Virat Kohli once, we'll have podcast with Virat Kohli's best mate.
No, I suppose the best in terms of sort of Virat Kohli-ish, probably best player or on my is Rahul Dravid. Got him out, caught me.
1-0. Caught me a wicket. The wall.
Yeah, it was a 2020 game. So it was. Well, I think it was meant to be a one-dayer, and it got reduced down to one day, a 2020, and yeah, he just flicked one to.
Just swinging back into the pads, just coming back in. I imagine.
Didn't bounce a little.
Mid wicket. We got him a little bit straighter. We've seen Dravid's technique. We know he comes at the ball coming in front. I know how you play it.
Bumped him out. He bumped him out. It was too quick for him. Just caught him on the glove.
I suppose in terms of facing a bowler, I played against in my last. No, I don't think it was my last year. Actually, played against the Aussie team that toured over here. I think it would have been 2016, something like that.
Attacking Canterbury was a
So
joke.
it had Johnson, Harris, Siddle. Now that was I got 40 against them, but because I was listening to Crossy's one actually, and he said obviously about Johnson. Now I'll tell you about my experience of Johnson. So it was sort of like 5 o'clock, and I'd gone in. I can't remember if I was batting at 6 or 8. I'm not too sure. And it was like it was sort of dusk, and obviously Johnson's charging down the hill. He's got a bit of an interest in action.
Yeah.
And I was nowhere, and well, it's a bit embarrassing really, but he bowled me this half volley and my feet were absolutely nowhere and I literally guided it to gully. I just went and it was Sean Marsh and he dropped the biggest goober. So I was like, I think I was on 10 or something, and yeah, an absolute dolly, and he's and now this is again a massive probably like lesson for anyone watching really about like time, because I then come back the next day. I was not out overnight, facing Mitchell Johnson now in broad daylight at 11 a.m. in the morning after seeing his action before, and it was, look, don't get me wrong, it wasn't the most pleasant, but I managed to play it, you know what I mean?
I'll finish it off. He was powder puff. That's what you were saying. You were saying Mitch Johnson was utter powder puff at 11 o'clock.
Well, I managed to cover drive in for 4 off the back foot, I suppose, sort of.
Oh,
a little bit of a front press, but
that's a football picture there.
But another good one from that was that Chris Rogers was standing at short leg, and one whistle passed my ear, and he went to me, now you know why I'm retiring, because I have to face this every morning.
Yeah. I always think about that when people go, the scary, who the scary bowlers, and you think about netting against these lads consistently, just going in there like, oh, for God's sake, I've got to go through that again. So shing,
just
shing,
I feel
shing.
a few off the middle of the bat. All of a sudden, you're fearing for your life.
Well, did you get a lot of chat from the Aussies that day? Did they chat a lot, or did they not bother because it was a warm-up game?
Yeah, not really, to be honest. Yeah, they were sort of, again, I think they were in a mind frame where they just needed to get what they needed out of the game, get some miles in their legs, and they sort of,
Johnson was bowling quick. I was sitting on the side for first. I remember watching.
Like obviously Johnson, but the one who was like Brian Harris was just proper, mate. Like such a nice load up. The wrist was just, and he just hit that length, and it would just. I remember he'd just out of nowhere be able to nip it in or nip it away without even at a decent pace.
An art form in terms of a seam bowler and his craft. There's not many better that can bowl a ball that jags in and away with limited change in his action.
And
It's
the thing
just
is, it's the
unreal.
pace he bowls at as well. I remember watching some highlights and sort of seeing like he's so clean and he does that, but at like 87, 88 mile an hour consistently. Like he doesn't go down as one of the quick bowlers, but actually in terms of consistency wise, his pace never really seemed to drop. He'd always be in around the 86 to 89 mile an hour, doing enough with the ball to keep you interested. I mean, fair play.
He's the sort of bowler as well. He almost, although granted within cricket everyone knows him, everyone will say he's a fantastic bowler. He can sometimes be forgotten about because you look at these bigger names and you'll always go to a Johnson, but in that attack there's no respite. Do you know what I mean? When you've got someone who's bowling at 90 clicks at you, and then you've got someone who's just going to go dink dink like
only slightly. I mean, to be fair, Johnson must have been bowling mid-90s easy at Canterbury. I remember like literally sitting at the side watching. And I remember, this is funny because I turned around. I remember watching Bell Drummond open the batting in the first innings. I watched the first innings. Then we got out first over of the game against Johnson because he was bowling absolute rockets. So I was like, yeah, he can't play this. This lad can't play this. He's absolutely nowhere, like you said. Gets 100 second innings, doesn't he? So completely proving me wrong. And Rob Key got 80 in the first innings, didn't he? Keysy got 80 on because he just stood there with his feet like basically together and just pulled everything. But no, that was memories from watching anyway. But you played quite a few touring sides, didn't you? International touring sides. I remember there was a couple. Didn't you play Sri Lanka at Canterbury? Is it Sri Lanka or West Indies?
I played West Indies in the last year. I can't remember whether we played Sri Lanka. Obviously played India in that 2020 as well. Played with and against some proper players. I can't complain, to be honest with you, mate. In terms of my career, look, I was being paid to play cricket from the age of sort of 16, 17. I travelled the world playing cricket. Obviously, with sport and playing it, you make some sort of lifelong friends and stuff like that. And it's set me up for life, really. I didn't go on to be England captain or anything like that, but I got to experience playing professional cricket and make some great friends along the way that will sort of stay in close contact for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and that's been a big benefit to us to have Bawley working for us more at Top Academy. He's been an absolute legend so far. But no, I think last question from me, and I think it'd be really interesting to get this from you, is we always ask guests for one bit of advice that you've been given. Anyone give you one bit of advice that you would pass on to someone else and say, this got me through, or this is something that really resonated with me?
It's actually it come from Mark Elam actually, who was obviously an all-rounder, but not necessarily a sort of genuine batter. But it was I remember speaking to him about my batting. So I was talking to him about I wanted to bat on off stump. So he turned around to me and said, why do you want to bat on off stump? And I said, well, I want to know where my off stump is. I want to be able to leave well. So this was particularly around sort of the 4-day game or the longer format and that. And he said, well, all you're talking about here is how you like trying to stop yourself from getting out. Why don't you spin it on his head and said, I'm doing this because this is going to enable me to score X amount of score more runs. And he said, well, when you bat, the whole idea is to score runs. You're going to get out at some point, but actually, how can you maximise the amount of runs you score in that time frame that you're there? Whether that's one ball, obviously not going to score many, but or you know what I mean. So that was something that definitely changed my view on batting, and I definitely pass on that advice to any aspiring batters. Is that whenever you're making changes, how is this going to enable you to score more runs? Yeah. As opposed to this is going to stop me from getting out.
Just creating that positive mindset, isn't it? it's looking at one thing in two different perspectives. You know, for me, that is just creating that positive mindset. I'm there to score runs, whether, you know, you say it all the time to batters. It doesn't matter how long you're in there for. You know, people are obsessed about staying at the crease for a long time, when the reality is people will only remember you, and the success will only be if a batter scores runs. Fantastic piece of advice. Fantastic.
Yeah. But Bawley, thank you so much for today, mate. It's been a pleasure to catch up. Really appreciate the time.